I'm putting the Bucks here.
Okay.
By the way, they added Tez Johnson in the 7th round out of Oregon. That's not a bad 7th rounder. The guy's fast.
He's fast.
And, Emeka Ibuka is now added to that wide receiver.
Yeah, he's
group.
very good.
Man,
Okay.
think about that.
Even just yesterday.
Moon's over.
It's not over. They're in the top third in the NFL.
They were in the top 3 all year.
I know.
He caps.
They got one and done. They lost both coordinators. Last team that lost both coordinators went from the Super Bowl to barely making the playoffs.
They were 10-1.
Understands. His wife is a bona fide top-notch actress. All right? Everybody back off Josh Allen.
But wait! There's more!
I'll tell you what, man. DeAndre Hopkins was a nice ad. They kept Ronnie Stanley. They added Malachi Starks in the draft. Mike Green out of Marshall was a second-round pick who fell because of some red flags of off the field that obviously the Ravens are say that they can fix.
All right, guys, I wanted to talk about this and then just put up my rankings next to Rich Eisen's and tell you what I thought. Now, Rich Eisen has the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 10. I actually have them a little bit higher. They did re-sign Godwin. They actually signed Hassan Reddick, I believe. They added a receiver in the draft. They were a good team last year. They almost beat the Washington Commanders, but just came up a little bit short in that game. And I think they're a real good team. I actually have them at 9. My 10th team I should talk about now is I kind of got the Packers in there. I still think the Packers are a good team. They had a rough year last year. I think a lot of things were not going their way, but I still think they're a balanced team. My only real problem with them is I feel like they're a little weak at wide receiver, and tight end could be a little bit better. But overall, I still think they're, in my mind, around 10. I like the quarterback. I love the run game, Josh Jacobs. So when you have a run game, to me, that goes a long way. So right now, I have the Packers at 10 and the Bucks at 9. And then we'll go to Rich Eisen's number 9, which is the Detroit Lions. Now, he's got them all the way down at 9. And while I do think they went down a little bit, they lost a little bit, lost both their coordinators. We know how that can affect the team in the next year. We saw it with the Eagles in 2023 after they came off a Super Bowl. It really hurt them that year. And their defensive coordinator, they switched coordinators in the middle of the year, and it just was a complete disaster by the end of the year. Their offensive coordinator wasn't that good, and it really hurt them. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to destroy Detroit. I believe Detroit is a team that will stick to the run game, and they're still very, very talented. I think people are a little bit harsh on Detroit. I think they're a little bit better than people think. And bottom line is I have them at 5. They were 15-2 last year. I do think they'll take a little bit of a step back, but I still think they're going to be a contender for the NFC. And I still think they're going to be a really good team. To me, their big problem last year was injuries. And the fact that Jared Goff is not really a big game quarterback. That's why the Rams got rid of him. And that's still his problem. Now, he can still get them to the Super Bowl, but they had so many injuries on defense that it wasn't enough. They could not stop the Washington Commanders because that defense was so banged up. And to me, that was expected. I expected the Commanders to beat them that game, and they did. Okay, so let's go to the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Vikings, we both probably pretty much agree. They're at 8, a very, very good team. I think the big question mark for the Vikings for me is quarterback. What is their quarterback situation going to look like? If it's good, they could actually move up. But right now, I think 8's a safe place to put a 14-3 team that lost their quarterback, but they are a very talented team. You still got Justin Jefferson. They re-signed Aaron Jones, and I think they're going to look pretty good going into 2025 season. Okay, so let's go to number 7. He's got Denver Broncos there. To me, I had Denver Broncos maybe around 11. They just missed my list. I mean, I really thought about this one. I said, I think if Green Bay played Denver Broncos, I kind of feel like Green Bay would win. Same with the Bucks, and pretty much went through my list of my top 10, and I had every team on my list beating them. Now Denver's quarterback's in his second year. We'll see how that looks. Sometimes quarterbacks struggle in their second year, and maybe he'll take a step up, and then that changes. But he's only a second-year quarterback. I do think they're a good team. No disrespect there, but I just got them at maybe around 11 or 12 on my list. Okay, so now he's got Buffalo Bills at 6. I think this is a bad spot. I really think Buffalo Bills are still going to be 3 on my list. They still have a monster quarterback, and I actually think they have some parts of their team that are underrated, such as the running back Cooks. And I think they're going to be just as good this year as last year. I don't see any change. Of course, they needed to add some weapons, but you know what? That quarterback's just going to make things happen. He's a special quarterback, and in the regular season, he's tough, and he's a good playoff quarterback too. So I really have them my number 3 on my list. I do. I really do. I feel like, take, for example, he's got Baltimore Ravens at 3. Well, Buffalo just beat Baltimore Ravens. Well, why would I not think that they wouldn't beat them again? So I still think that Buffalo is a better team than Baltimore, for example. And that brings me to 7 on my list, which is Baltimore Ravens. That's where I have them. A very good team. One of my big problems with Baltimore is the quarterback's just not a good playoff quarterback. It kind of reminds me of like Peyton Manning, great quarterback, but in the playoffs, just his game just goes down a notch. And until Baltimore can figure that out, they have a really good team. I mean, if that wasn't the issue, they probably really would be ranked 3 on my list. But until I see them come out and beat, Buffalo or Kansas City in the playoffs, really impress me in the playoffs and play to their potential in the playoffs, I can't put them any higher than 7. Well, a very talented team, a team with enough talent to win the whole thing. I love their draft. Malachi Starks, great addition. He's going to be a great Raven. I have a lot of respect for that team and that organization, but I'm just not very happy with the quarterback as a playoff performer. Okay, let's go next. So he's got Kansas City at 5 on his list. Me, I still have Kansas City at 2. Until somebody other than the Eagles go out and beat Kansas City, especially in the playoffs, why would I think anything different is going to happen? Buffalo has tried for several years and failed. Baltimore can't do it. I don't think anyone in the AFC is still at the point where they're going to beat Kansas City in the playoffs. And until I see somebody beat them, I'm putting them 2. They still have the best quarterback in football. They still have probably the best head coach in football. So why do I think they're not going to be anywhere near to where they were last year? They're still probably going to be first or second seed in the AFC. And until I see one of these teams beat them in the playoffs, I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm not putting any of those teams above them. Buffalo didn't do enough to in my eyes, this offseason to make them better than Kansas City. Baltimore didn't do enough. Denver didn't do enough. Who else is going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC? To be honest, I think the NFC's got some teams with good quarterbacks that can actually play in the playoffs. For example, Washington Commanders. They have a quarterback who is going to play big in big moments. Los Angeles Rams, quarterback, going to play good and good moments. So I really feel like in that way, the NFC is better in far as they got quarterbacks that can play big time football at big time moments. And I think that's the problem with the AFC, and that is why people have struggled against Kansas City, because they just don't have the big time quarterbacks to beat them. Now, I would think that Josh Allen is that kind of quarterback, but every time he goes against Kansas City, he loses. And I do think some of that is the coach. And I don't like Sean McDermott. I don't think he's a good head coach. In fact, I think he sucks. And I think he may be the reason that Buffalo has not gotten over the hump. Okay, so let's go to number 4 on Rich Eisen's list. He got the Los Angeles Rams. Actually, that's probably where I have them. This is a team that's been drafting excellent. They still have Stafford, who's a stud quarterback, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, a quarterback who's going to play big in big moments. They almost beat the Eagles. I love their young defensive players on that line. My big weakness there is I still think they need that explosive running back. They got a workhorse back, but they lack that explosive. And then, can they stop the run? Those are the two big weaknesses with the Rams. But I do believe they're going to be even better this year. I think probably next to the Eagles, they're the best team in the NFC. I have them slightly over Detroit, and that's mainly because I like the quarterback better on the Rams than in Detroit. So I think that's the big thing there. Now, again, he has Baltimore at 3. I told you I got them at 7. And so I'll just go to my 3, which is where I have Buffalo Bills. And I still think the Bills are probably the 3rd best team in the NFL. I do like Josh Allen. I think he's a stud quarterback. So anyways, I already talked on that. So then he's got Commanders at 2. Now let's talk Commanders. I still have them at 6. I think Commanders are getting better. They got a young stud quarterback who's, to me, it's so important when a quarterback plays clutch football in big moments. He's big time and big time. That's why I like Jalen Hurts, because in the biggest moments, he plays his best. And I really think that, Washington has that in their quarterback. So Washington, to me, I have them at 6, which is right up there. That means they could compete. They can potentially win the NFC. I don't think they will, but now I'm not the biggest fan of the Debo trade or signing. What's a trade or sign? I can't remember, but he's a little bit older, worn down. I don't know how good he's going to be. That will be interesting to watch. They lost a couple players on their defense. I do like the Zach Ertz re-signing for Washington. I think Zach Ertz is great for a young quarterback. He really is a safety net, and we saw it last year. He was just fantastic, and I have a lot of respect for Zach Ertz as a player, and I think that was a good move for Washington to keep him. And they got good receivers. They got a good run game, so they're a really, really good team. I like it, and they're right there. I got them 6. He's got them 2. I want to put them over. I don't know if they could beat the Rams. I don't know if they could beat Kansas City. I don't know if they could beat Buffalo. I don't think they could beat these teams. And I don't know that they would beat Detroit if Detroit was healthy. If Detroit had a healthy defense in that playoff game, I believe Detroit would have won that game. And so then we'll go to number 1 on both our lists, and that's the Eagles, the Super Bowl champs. And I do think Eagles lost a couple players, but they had a really good draft. They've added a couple players. I think, as long as Dallas Goedert's there, I still got them at number 1, because you still got a lethal wide receiver duel, probably the best in football. And then you got a top 10 tight end and the best offensive line in football by far. It's not even close. And and then they got, their defense is still going to be really good. And they got so many young players on that defense. They have a defensive coordinator now. I think the big thing for the Eagles will be the new offensive coordinator, how that adjustment takes place. But fortunately, they still have Vic Fangio running that defense, which is going to bring stability. It's not like 2023 where you had two new coordinators and you tried to figure it out and it didn't work. We got Vic Fangio. He knows what he's doing. And I think also what we saw last year is that Nick Sirianni is very heavily involved in that offense. You can see it in the Super Bowl. You can see him talking to the coordinator. So I think they're going to be okay on offense. In fact, I think they're going to have a better passing year this year because people are going to be so focused on stopping Saquon, and I think they're going to tweak things a little bit, and they're going to come out and they're going to be a much more balanced team. The Eagles are still my pick to win the Super Bowl, get back and win it this year. I think they're the best team in football, talent-wise, and I think Jalen Hurts is a clutch quarterback. So, when you got the best roster in football and then you got a quarterback who's very clutch, and you got a really experienced defensive coordinator and the number one ranked defense, I think you're going to be good. I think they're going to be really, really tough to beat. I expect them to go back and win the Super Bowl unless something happens like injuries, which is always possible. But that's how I got it. So I got Eagles 1, Kansas City 2, Buffalo 3, Rams 4, Detroit 5, Commanders 6, Ravens 7, Vikings 8, Tampa 9, Green Bay 10. Now, if I had one of those teams that I was not 100% certain about, it would be the Vikings. And that's just because of the quarterback situation. I want to see how that plays out. I'm very interested. But Vikings are a loaded roster. So anyways, guys, how do you have it ranked? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your opinions on this. Anyways, thanks, guys. Talk to you later.